a genius scientist. His one wish? Create a machine that can communicate with deceased historical figures. The result? Utter failure. The twist? A legacy taken up by his strangest creation. A self-aware, slime-based lifeform. Its name? Dr. Tiberius Slime. His mission? To complete his father's failed experiment and use it to create the greatest streaming empire ever known. This is
Dr. Slime's Time Stream.
Episode 1, Battle Brothers.
What's up, YouTube? Chase Chenoda here again for Dr. Slime's Time Stream, continuing my playthrough of Battle Brothers. Now, if you were here last time, you may remember that I got creamed pretty brutally by the first well-armed enemies I actually came up against. Now, that is obviously my mistake, or my bad, as we used to say in the 90s. I came in a little unprepared. I came in a little arrogant, so I'm going to try and remedy that this time. Now, I did want to maybe back out of the contract, but then I realized, I've not been role-playing the Familia properly, so I'm not going to back out of the contract. What I'm going to do instead is buy some more dudes, arm them better, and just come in, again, with a little less arrogance, thinking I know exactly how to do things, Arrogance is a death sentence in college sports, the world I come from. My buddy Safeway, Safeway was his nickname, his real name was Mingus. He once lost a basketball game to a bunch of dudes in wheelchairs because he just assumed you needed to have legs to play ball. Some of these dudes had legs, they just didn't work. And he didn't realize they were the US Paralympic team. And, even after he lost, he didn't know how to back down. He wasn't able to be humble. So they kind of kicked his ass, actually beat him really savagely. And, in a funny kind of irony, he ended up needing a wheelchair for a while. And I like to say he learned the error of his ways, but then I looked him up. I looked him up now using the internet, and it seems that he got arrested a couple years back for trying to sell coke to children outside of school. So I don't know. Maybe he did learn from the experience. Maybe he, on the one hand, learned not to judge a book by its cover, but still wanted to try and make easy money by selling, marching powder to tweens. But people contain multitudes. So yeah, we're going to try and complete this. So I'm thinking what I need to do is be a little more organized. I can't just come into this and charge straight at the enemy. So I need to think about how my guys are actually armed. So if you see here, what I'm doing is I'm giving them reach weapons. Egon the Quick, kind of a cool guy. Not given a character from the movie's name yet because, again, I don't know how long these dudes are gonna last. Considering every single one of them died last time, they might have quite a short lifespan. So we're going to head back to the graveyard and see if we can do a little better this time on Dr. Slime's Time Stream with Chase Chenoda. Okay, so here we are. It's a pretty similar setup. I'm going to start out by taking a shot again. Now, I'm going to go for the same guy I tried to hit last time because I missed him, and I really resent him. And oh my goodness, we hit him straight away. This is promising. My focus this time is really making sure that my formation is on point. The one thing I have going for me this time around is numbers. If I can swarm them effectively, I might be able to win. That's why I got all the reach weapons, so I can use my second line to attack over my front line. So I'm going to try and surround them as much as possible until the fight actually starts. So they're going to keep coming in, and I think turn 2 is when we're probably going to see the violence start. I don't want to... I'm going to be a little cautious because my ass was really kicked quite horrendously last time. But at the same time, you need to move on from your mistakes. An example, for instance, is Alpha Beta Sigma, my frat, had a couple of big controversies back in the early 90s. There was this legendary dude, legendary brother. I think his nickname was the Sledge or the Hammer. Anyway, he was, from what everyone says, a great dude. Always ready to do a kickstand. Always ready to wingman his homies. Always ready to come up with fun, exciting new ways to haze the pledges. And anyway, this is a little before my time, but apparently a hazing got a little out of hand, nothing crazy. I think someone got like a little bit, tiny bit set on fire. Someone had to go to the hospital for kidney damage, and usually it's liver damage and alpha beta sigma, but no, he was hurt pretty bad. And, that could have, that could have been the end of it for a lot of us, Hammer could have been kicked out of college, alpha beta sigma could have been banned from doing hazings. Imagine that, dude, a frat with no hazings. We could have let one slightly rambunctious hazing define us, but we didn't, we moved on. We grew as people. And I know what you're thinking. You might be thinking, well, Chase, if Alpha Beta Sigma had stopped doing hazings back in the early 90s, you wouldn't have died in a hazing in 2001. And to that I would say, yeah, okay, well, you would have a point there. Yeah, you'd have a pretty good point there. I wonder how Hammer is doing these days. I should look him up. Apparently he was a legend.
Hello everyone, Dr. Tiberius Slime here. Unfortunately, I have had to cut out this part of the audio because Chase looked up who the Hammer is, and for legal reasons I do not want to broadcast his real identity after some of the things Chase said here. Enjoy the rest of the stream.
If you think about the first movie, you got LA street racers who steal DVD players, and then you got a cop who's basically just being sent in to investigate these dudes who are stealing DVD players. It's not high-strung, these big, massive storylines. It's not fate of the world type stuff, which I think is what I really liked about F and F. I might start calling it F and F. But that's what I really liked about F and F in the beginning. Is these are personal stories. These are stories we can all relate to. You're trying to run your gang, and then you got this new best friend who's trying to bang your sister, and, he seems cool, but then it turns out he does want to bang your sister, but he's also a cop, and you hate cops, dude, because you're an LA street racer who steals DVD players. But anyway, that all falls apart because Brian lets the main, criminal go because he's banging his sister. And so they say, Brian, you really screwed up. We're going to send you down to Florida, down to Miami to deal with a bunch of coke dealers. And that's where he meets his old buddy Roman, who then becomes part of the Familia, and Eva Mendes, babe, who does not become part of the Familia. So now, look, progression, okay? Fairly normal, grounded start. And then you go into 3, which is Tokyo Drift, and that actually takes place after 6, so 3 is way ahead, so let's not get stuck there. So let's go to 4, okay? In 4, Dom and Brian go undercover running drugs under the Mexican border for the cartels, which actually, to me, makes sense. I don't know a lot about the LA street racer world, but I can see them being hired by the cartels to drive through a series of complex underground tunnels that only a really sick driver could use. It's also the movie where Brian finally retires from the police and joins the gang, who I guess now aren't a street racer gang anymore. They're more like cartel members. So yeah, and I guess at this point they've all been undercover agents. Letty was also an undercover agent, but at this point she's dead, even though she's not dead. Anyway, look, I think I'm gonna pretty much mop these guys up now. There's only 2 of them left. Getting some real slaughtering done, which is pretty nice. I'm really enjoying having massacred these dudes purely because they really seem to take a perverse joy in kicking my ass. At least that's how I'm justifying doing the same to them. That's right, dude. There you go. Haha. Okay, 1 more left. Is he gonna run for it? I hope I can steal his stuff. Well, anyway. Point being, so then we go to 5. They're in Rio, and they're wanted federal criminals because at the end of 4, they broke Dom out of prison. No, that's at the end of 5. Oh no, Havard. Well, easy come, easy go. I think Havard was homeless before this, which doesn't make it okay that he's dead. It just makes it, in some ways, a statistical inevitability. All right, let's go get that paper. Let's go get that money. Okay, making that paper, moving up in the world. It's important to find a real career because my buddy Mango, he used to sell meth to truckers on the I-95, which isn't really a career. He did it for like 2 years, but then weirdly ended up getting arrested for ripping Linkin Park's hybrid theory and selling it to people on the side while he worked at Taco Bell. He was part of a lawsuit against Napster by Metallica and got just got kind of caught up in the whole mess. This actually was a pretty big deal at the time, but I guess nobody gives a crap anymore. Anyway, kind of poetic ending, because Mango is actually heavy into meth now, although, you know, doing it, not selling it. I guess he got high on his own supply, you know, which is, again, ironic because he used to really like listening to Linkin Park. Yeah, so we made some decent scratch there and only lost one guy. It's a testament to the game design of Battle Brothers that you can have such wildly different outcomes depending on how you approach a battle. Actually, now that I've said that out loud, I actually think that may just be a basic requirement of good game design, so let's forget that. Anyway, it looks like a few of my familia are ready to level up, and with great power comes great responsibility, which basically means that when they level up, I'm gonna give them a name and actually start caring about them even just a little bit. I wish I could say I came up with the power and responsibility thing, by the way, but that was actually my buddy Dunstan told me about that. He's named after the chimp in the movie Dunstan Checks In. Anyway, last time I saw him, he was spurging hard because they were going to make a Spider-Man movie, which, I don't know, man. Comic book movies, I mean, The Mask was fun. I like that he was green. But Batman and Robin, you know, that movie sucked. It was like the theater kids from college got to direct an action movie. I mean, ice skating, bro? Don't ever make me watch ice skating. I'm liable to spaz if someone makes me watch ice skating, dude. Anyway, so I'm leveling up some of the brothers. First is Alwyn. We gotta find him a good character, but not somebody too good. We need to be a couple movies worth of gameplay in until someone we really care about dies. Okay, right. Someone at Google needs to lose their job because this is not Jesse. I know I called him Flip or Sponge or whatever last time, but I still know him when I see him, dude. Wait, is that supposed to be Johnny Tran? What? And Vince? Okay, look. Sometimes a white dude pretending to be another race is funny, like Ted Danson at that roast of Whoopi Goldberg, or when Triple H did it, or when Dan Aykroyd did it, or when Billy Crystal did it, but that was all famous white dudes pretending to be black dudes, or in Danson's case, a woman. And they chose to do it. I don't think whoever this dude is will be happy that Google is using him to represent a man of Asiatic descent. It's not cool. So if it wasn't clear, I've been warned by Dr. Slime that certain social mores have changed in the years since my death. And he says it's pretty important to be on the right side of whatever the prevailing social attitude is. I'm finding that really difficult, so I hope you noticed that's what I was doing just then. Anyway, let me know how I did in the comments, because I can do it more or less, whatever. I'm going to continue my trend of taking characters who are steeped in villainy in the original series and making them part of my familia. For example, Carter Verone, which is a bomb-ass name. I'm going to hire him, well, change the name of Alwyn to Carter Verone. And I know some of you might be thinking, you know, he's a sociopathic, murderous coke dealer, and why would I make him part of my, you know, inner circle of trusted battling brothers? But people can change, you know, like Mango I was talking about earlier. You know, he used to sell meth, now he's addicted to meth. So, you know, if a former meth dealer can become a meth addict, it's not outside the realm of possibility for a former Miami coke dealer to become like a flailsman or pitchforker, I guess. You get to increase 3 stats and a perk each time you level up. Carter Verone is gonna need to be able to take more hits, because I don't want to lose too many more bros. I'm gonna choose Colossus for the health benefits, and Johnny Tran, I'm making my shooter in the streets, because he's actually one of the only Fast and Furious villains to successfully shoot and kill a familia member. So up next is this guy, Robert, but that ain't gonna fly, man. Name like that ain't gonna fly in the familia, so let's change him to, no, let's go with our first actual familia member. So no villains, not some secondary guy. This is gonna be Vince. Now, the guy in the picture is not Vince. If you're having trouble remembering Vince, he's the character who used some words that were very funny to call people in 2001, but really not okay to call people in 2025. One of the gamer words, I believe they're called. I want to come up with some kind of cool little nickname for him. Let's see what his actual quotes are from the movie. Let's see what okay, so not that one, obviously. Let's go with Tuna Hater. It's not like... Is that That's not a slur now, too, right? If it is a slur, let me know in the comments and we will change his nickname. Common misconception, Vince doesn't actually die at the end of Fast and Furious 1. Everyone just kind of thinks he does because he disappears. But he's actually back in 5, where he does die. Relatively low value Familia member, that's why I'm not feeling too bad about bringing him in at this point. He does betray Dom, but he later dies saving him. So I'm going to give him an overall a 6 out of 10 on the Familia-ometer. Funny thing though, I did some research and it turns out the actor, despite looking like Dane Cook, is actually not Dane Cook. He kind of took a step back from acting so he could focus on being a father, which is extremely Familia coded. It's literally what Brian does at the end of 7, and Brian is obviously 10 out of 10 on the Familia-ometer. So I'm going to give Matt Schultz an honorary 9 on the Familia-ometer. Good job, Matt Schultz. He doesn't get a 10 because I don't think he's ever driven a high precision sports car in an incredibly dangerous environment. If he has though, please hit me up in the comments and let me know and I will push him up to a 10. Now where was I on the whole job progression thing? 5, I think Fast 5, where they're in Rio and they're wanted federal criminals, technically ex-cartel and now independent bank heisters. They're running from the DSS, but then they end up teaming up with the DSS at the end, but it's pro bono. So I guess they're not officially in that job role. So I'd say at this point, maybe private criminals, if that's a job title. But in 6, they actually become contracted by the DSS to take on a team of ex-Special Forces mercenaries who are trying to steal a chip to make an EMP. And that definitely makes them private military contractors, which is, again, fairly logical step up from cartel. But it's definitely a step up. That's good job progression. You want to kind of make moves like that in your career. Oh, sweet, dude. We got a mascot like Aunt Jemima or the Geico Gecko. Wait, what? Dude, what an asshole. He bit my main shooter's finger off, man. Johnny Tran's finger is gone. That dog ate Johnny Tran's finger. Wait, isn't Johnny Korean? You know, that's kind of funny because
It's Dr. Slime again, cutting in because there was no way I was leaving this part in the final video. I may be lacking in scruples as I possess very little of what humans call empathy, but I was not born yesterday. I was born last year and am well aware of the prevailing social climate and just good taste. So management, me, will be having a word with Chase Chenoda to reiterate that it is no longer the 1990s. Thank you.
You know, I'm just playing, guys. I'm just playing. I really mean it. I'm just having fun, dude. I'm just having fun. So back to the career progression anyway. Dude, so 7, they're all retired. I'm pretty sure they're like millionaires at that point. They get recruited by the CIA, which is, I guess, a lateral move from the DSS. So not much progression there. But then in 8, they come out of retirement to work for the CIA again. Dom takes on a brief role as a cyber terrorist because he's coerced into doing it because his family are threatened. Big mistake, bro. Anyway, at this point, they're all pretty experienced in engaging in high-level espionage. There's a couple white hat hackers on the team at this point, kind of making each other's role in the Familia sort of pointless. They're actually a paramilitary force. I think it's fair to say at this stage they use a missile to destroy a nuclear submarine, which, you know, the militaries of a lot of smaller nations wouldn't have the funding or hardware to pull off. So yeah, paramilitary group, private military contractors with a specialism in cybersecurity. Which sounds absurd when you consider they started out stealing DVD players from truckers, but DVD players were actually pretty high tech in 2001. So it's not like there's no precedent there, dude. You know, they kind of started out with tech, moved on to tech. They stayed definitely in the tech sphere, kind of tech bros, I guess you could call them. So, honorable mention to Hobbs and Shaw, combat anyway. Hobbs and Shaw, which doesn't feature the primary Familia, but does make genetically engineered super soldiers canon to the franchise.
which I'm pretty sure is actually alluded to throughout the series when characters like Dom and Han, and later Giselle, survive incidents that would pulverize the internal organs of any living creature on Earth. Like, a bull elephant would die if you did this to them. And I think that's foreshadowing, maybe in the later movies we'll find out they were kind of like used in genetic experimentation as children. Maybe their memories are implanted. I don't know. I don't want to give the guys who write it ideas, because they're already cooking. They're already cooking with gas, bro. Concurrent with the events of Hobbs and Shaw, you have Fast 9, and both movies feature large groups of private military forces engaged in and subsequently losing pitched battles against plucky teams of oddballs. In Hobbs and Shaw, it's Hobbs' Samoan family. In Fast 9, it's the Familia, of course. Since Hobbs is retired from the DSS at this point, it could be argued that he is working as a contractor for what I'm now going to refer to from here on as Familia PMC. It's not explicitly stated, but I'm pretty sure both Hobbs and Shaw are blooded members of the Familia PMC at this stage in the franchise, and obviously in death you continue to serve the Familia, which by Fast 9 would make the Familia PMC a global network of white hat spec ops contractors specializing in cutting-edge biological and technological warfare. Which again, sounds crazy, hijacking DVD players, but when you consider that every step to this point has been logical, dude, that's called verisimilitude, man. That's how you make a believable movie series. Let's see who we're up against. I'm not too worried. I think I kind of... What the f*** is that? Okay, we're going to run away. Yeah, we're gonna run away. Damn, dude, I gotta see if Tego's still around. There were vampires and werewolves in, like, historical England and France? That's crazy, dude. We're not fighting those. We're running away. Get out of there, boys. I think we got a head start. I'm not above running for my freaking life. If you think about it, that's what Dom does at the end of Fast 1. He runs for his freaking life, and that's what we're doing here. It's classic Familia gameplay. Yeah, dude, I'm not dealing with German werewolves at this stage. We can barely handle guys who have better armor than us, and I don't even want to know when the hell we're going to face whatever those giant green things were on the load screen. Going back to 9, so Fast 9, the Familia PMC get tapped by the CIA to deal with a new cutting-edge cyber terrorist threat. At this point, they're essentially, I don't care if you attack us, dude. I'm not fighting German werewolves. We're running away again. But they get tapped by the CIA. At this point, they're probably the CIA's best asset. Although, this time the cyber terrorists, their trigger man is Dom's brother, Jacob, suggesting that the Toretto lineage is innately drawn to high-performance motor vehicles and world-altering global conflict, which would make Mia the black sheep of the family because, at least up until this point in the franchise, she hasn't been hired to do wet work for a highly secretive government body or acted as muscle for cyber criminals, threatening to upend the entire geopolitical order of the world. So Fast 9, Familia PMC expands into aerospace engineering and actually sends a couple of its members into low Earth orbit, where they fire on enemy satellites, making them the first organization in the world to engage in space warfare in recorded human history. They then rendezvous with the ISS. This would make Familia PMC the preeminent organization in matters of space warfare on Earth. They're probably one of the only organizations on Earth to have astronauts on their roster with orbital combat experience. Again, the precedent is set for this in 1. The strategy they use to steal DVD players is really high-tech. Well, everyone, we're going to end here today, I think. It may not be on a big moment like last time where my entire squad got wiped out, but, this is a little preferable. It's like TM Enron said, sometimes it's better not to end with a bang. Sometimes it's better to end with a, oh crap, what did he say? Yeah, whatever, dude.